Let's talk marriage. This is Pastor Larry coming to you this Wednesday afternoon with Let's Talk Marriage. All right. Going to get right on into our program. Hope everyone is doing well. If you woke up this morning, guess what? You are doing well. We're going to get right on into our program today. On our program today is we're going to be talking about or asking the question, what type of spouse or wife are you? What type of wife or spouse are you? Are you a vicious spouse? Let me give you a little definition of vicious. We all probably know, but let me give you a little definition of vicious. Spiteful, malicious, savage, ferocious. Are you a vicious wife? Again, spiteful, malicious, savage, ferocious, unpleasant. What type of wife are you? Are you a vicious wife? Are you vicious or are you virtuous? The Bible talks about a virtuous woman. Are you a virtuous wife or are you a vicious wife? Because we have so many times we have wives that don't really support their husband. Every time the husband do something, they very critical and they don't encourage their husbands. But a lot of times that's because this is the month of February. We're still in the month of February. The month of March, we're going to be talking to the men. But we're still in the month of February, so we're still talking to the women. Anyway, it's so important that you support your spouse and lift them up and keep them in your prayers. And one thing I can say about my wife, she's very supportive of things, endeavors that we have, and she's very encouraging. So this is how you want to be a virtuous woman. Are you vicious or virtuous? Because if you're a virtuous woman, one of the things that the word virtuous mean is conforming to moral and ethical principles, chastened, a virtuous young person. You might hear somebody say something about a virtuous young person or a virtuous woman. Are you vicious or virtuous? Because nowadays it's so easy to come against the ones you love, and sometimes you lash out against the people that you love because they're there, and this is not what we want to be. We want to be, especially if we are in church and things like that. You want to make sure that you are being supportive of your husband and supporting him wholeheartedly, just like we were talking about last week, we've talked about on the program how the men should be supporting their wives, but also the wives should be supporting their husbands. Sometimes us husbands, we not perfect, so we mess up a lot. We're not perfect, but you know what? The man that's striving for perfection or striving to be a better husband is the one that'll admit that he's wrong when he's wrong. He'll admit when he's wrong even though he's not wrong. Just to keep the peace. Those are the men that you want to make sure that you're supporting. And a lot of times, especially in the households where you have the spouse is the only one, or the wife is the only one that going to church. When he supports you, not making a big deal about it, not fussing about it, even though he might not be saved, you still should be supporting your spouse. And a lot of times you have the people telling you, "Oh, you need to get rid of that devil. He don't want to go to church." If he's supporting you and not making a big deal and still supporting the family and still a loving husband, you still support that husband because husband is saved by the wife, and that means it's your opportunity to be an example to him in order to get him in church. And then again, we talked about on the program a lot of times to find out why he's not going to church, especially if he's been to church before or he used to go to church and all of a sudden he's just stopped going. You need to find out why he's not going to church. If it's because he doesn't agree with everything that goes on in church, doesn't like the church, find another church. And if you can't make up your mind or make a decision on a particular church, find a neutral church to go to. Some church that you both are like, and a lot of times you hear people talking about, oh, you don't need no programs. Yeah, you do need programs in your church, because what the program does is enhance your ministry. It opens up doors for your young people, for your seniors, for people in the neighborhood, and that's what you're there for. You're there for the neighborhood. That's what the church is for. Is for the neighborhood, is the outreach. It should be the church should be the outreach center of the neighborhood where people can come for things like that. That's why we need to make sure that we are being supportive and being a virtuous woman, not a vicious woman, where you tear down. Because I've seen so many times where the first lady tore down the ministry because she was not in agreement with the spouse. So you have to make sure that we don't fall into that category, and when you fall into that category, it tends to make everything hard in a marriage, and it makes everything a big conflict in a marriage. So you have to make sure that we are respecting and supporting each other. Things that just simple things that you can show supporting of your spouse, or supporting of your husband, or supporting of men supporting their wives. It's just simple things you do, and the simple things add up, and they make a world of difference. So we want to make sure that we are not a vicious wife. And let's go back to the word vicious. Vicious, spiteful. Sometimes it's human nature to try to get back at somebody, to be spiteful for somebody, and that's how a lot of discussions get escalated into arguments, because one party will say something, and then the other one got to get back at him, or out talk the other one, and nobody's listening because you're being spiteful, malicious. You do things to set them up. I knew you were gonna do that. I just knew it. I knew you were gonna do that. Just setting them up for failure by doing things like that. And what we want to make sure that we're doing is not being spiteful, malicious, ferocious. Make sure you're not being those or setting yourself up to be in those categories, because it's easy to fall into those traps, and just every time you turn around, both of you are arguing over the craziest things. Sometimes, a lot of times, if you think back at the arguments you had with your spouse, a lot of them didn't even make sense. A lot of those arguments didn't even make sense. If you can remember them, sometimes you can't even remember the argument. But then you have those spouses that remember every minute, every day. Oh, I remember it was about 4 o'clock that afternoon when you acted the fool with me. You remember all that. How you remember that? Can't you remember where your keys at? Come on, people, make some sense. You can't even remember where your keys at, but you remember that the day and the hour and the time that your husband acted the fool. You got to bring it up all the time. You're being malicious, unpleasantly. Every time his friends come around, you got to throw out hints that he ain't no good. He ain't doing that. Those are things you have to be supporting. You have to watch sometimes what you're saying, and it's all part of communication. We talked about communication a lot of times. The best communicators are the ones that listen, and when you're listening, you can't out-talk each other. When you're listening, you can't out-talk each other, because if you're trying to out-talk each other, nobody's listening, nobody's being heard. And you have to remember that you have people in your household that are watching you. Not only your neighbors are watching you, there are people in your household that are watching you. Your children are always watching you. If they see mom and dad into it all the time, guess what? When they get in a relationship, they're going to be in it all the time. they hear mama nitpicking with dad, that's how they're gonna be in their relationship. They're gonna be nitpicking with, or if they take abuse, then they get in abusive relationships, and it's setting the pace for things to just keep occurring, and you have to get rid of those curses like that, those generational curses, and part of those generational curses stem from things that are little small things that happen in the marriage that are end up being big things because they get escalated very easily. Sometimes it's good not to say something, and then it's good to wait to say so before you say something. Gather your thoughts together, because if you say the first thing that come off the top of your head, it's not going to make sense, and then you're going to be offensive. So you have to make sure that we are in our marriage, that we are very supportive, and not, and then being a virtuous woman. When you're a virtuous woman, everything just flows in place. And not saying that the virtuous woman is going to be perfect, because there's no such thing as a perfect woman, just like there's no such thing as a perfect man. But what you want to make sure that you're doing is, which that we've always mentioned on the program, is supporting each other and not taking each other for granted. Sometimes we take each other for granted in our marriages. Just assume that the spouse is going to do this, and the husband assume that the wife is going to do this. Make sure that you appreciate everything. You get a meal, don't even say thank you. Just eat it before you can breathe, and just gobble it up, and then go sit down. Don't even say thank you, and then, oh, that was a fine meal, nothing. And then sometimes you have the wives that just throw something together because they don't want to do it anyway. You should have did it yourself. You got two hands. Yeah, you got two hands, but this is something, things that you should be responsible for, and things that you should take responsibility for. Because guess what? You have people in your house that's watching you, and they hear you throwing plates around on the table because you didn't want to cook in the first place, or slamming pots and pans around. Guess what? When your daughter gets married, she's going to be the same way and continue that generational curse. That's why a lot of times you find women that get in abusive relationships, because they came from an abusive background. And if they came from an abusive background, they saw mama getting whooped up by daddy and arguing and fighting. And guess what? She going to find the same type of fella, and try to settle down with him, and then you're going to be having the same thing going over and over again. Then her daughter's going to see that, and it goes over and over. And the same thing with the young men. If they see dad abusing mom, and cursing her out, calling her names and calling her out, guess what? He's going to do the same thing. As soon as he get a wife, girlfriend, or fiance, or whatever, he's going to be doing the same thing. So we have to make sure that we are breaking these generational curses by being supportive, and not being a vicious wife, but being a virtuous wife. This is Pastor Larry. We're going to be signing off. We love you guys, and make sure that again, coming up on March the 30th, we are having our family and friends at New Zion Christian Center, our family and friends services. We're going to be there. The service is going to begin, or the dinner is going to begin at 2 o'clock. Service is going to begin at 3:30. And it's just a bunch of us getting together, encouraging each other, encouraging the saints, telling them to go ahead, and God is with you, and stay on the wall, as my grandmother used to say, stay on the wall. That's what we're there to, encouraging God's people. And make sure you make plans to be out with us, and we hope to see you there. And again, putting the question before you, what type of wife are you? Are you a virtuous wife or a vicious wife? This is Pastor Larry. Until we meet again. All right. right, all right. All right, I want to take this opportunity, to give you the location of our church. We're at 15014 Desplain Street, 15014 Desplain Street in Plainfield, Illinois. 15014 Desplain Street in Plainfield, Illinois. Our regular services begin at 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. But on March 30th, we're going to be having our Family and Friends Day. That's going to start a little later. And that's going to start and that's going to start at 2. Dinner is going to be serving because people will be getting out of service, getting out of church. So we're preparing a meal for you at 2 o'clock, and then we're going into the service at 3:30. But normally our services begin at 11 a.m. But on March 30th, keep that in mind, keep it on your calendar. March 30th, we're going to be having that family and friends celebration. Hope to see you there, and we're going to have a wonderful, wonderful time, encouraging each other and telling each other to go on and encouraging God's people. This is Pastor Larry. Until we meet again. All right, all right.